They whispered behind her back like mosquitoes in the dark. Every time Nora stepped out to buy bread or greet a neighbour, someone would pause their conversation and shoot her, that look the one that mixed pity with judgment. And when she walked by with a smile on her face, pushing Tunde's wheelchair slowly through the narrow street, it was as if the entire neighbourhood held their breath, waiting for her to crack. Nora had grown used to the stares, but not to the words. "I heard she's doing it for attention," said Madame Rita at the local salon. "Or maybe she's just too desperate to let go. Who else would marry a vegetable? Someone else would add. She used to be so promising. Look at her now." The thing they didn't understand was Nora wasn't staying out of pity. She wasn't even staying out of love. She was staying because of what happened that night. The night everything changed. But she couldn't tell them that. She couldn't tell anyone. Tunde's eyes followed her every move as she gently adjusted his blanket. His body had grown thinner over the months, and the lively young man who once joked endlessly about life and made her laugh during late-night calls was now just still. He could nod faintly and occasionally blink his approval, but his legs didn't work, and his voice was a fragile whisper at best. Nora stepped outside the small house they rented and sat on the wooden stool near the steps. She looked out across the street, her eyes tracing the path she and Tunde used to walk when things were normal. Before the accident, before the blood. She could still hear the sound. That horrible thud. That night was supposed to be special. Tunde had just gotten good news about a job. They were celebrating, laughing, music on, rain falling gently outside. She told him to slow down. He said he had it under control. But then a shadow appeared in the headlights, and everything spiraled. She remembered the scream. The moment the car jerked, the sickening silence after. Tunde stopped the car. They both stared at each other. He got out. She followed. A boy, maybe 15. His slippers lay beside him, his legs twisted unnaturally. And instead of calling for help, they panicked. Tunde pulled her back into the car. "If we report this, you'll be dragged into it," he said. "Your nursing application, your future. They'll bury us." And they left. Just like that. It wasn't until a week later they heard on the news that the body was found. A grieving mother was pleading with the public. The guilt nearly killed Nora. Tunde tried to reassure her. But someone had seen them. A month later, Tunde was called in by police. Nora never knew what was said, only that he returned pale and quiet. 2 days later, the car was found burned near a bridge. Then came the accident. He was pushed down a staircase by someone no one ever found. Just like that, the once energetic, street-smart man became the fragile body in the wheelchair. Now, Nora lived with the weight of 2 secrets, the life they took and the punishment they were now living. The world saw her as a loyal girlfriend staying with her paralyzed man. But that wasn't it. She wasn't loyal, she was trapped. By fear, by guilt, by the knowledge that Tunde could still speak a name she never wanted spoken. And maybe, just maybe, by the sense that someone out there still remembered what they did that night. She heard footsteps approach. A boy from the street handed her a folded paper. No name, just 3 words scrawled in uneven handwriting. "I know everything." Nora's heart dropped. Nora stared at the note as if it had grown fangs. Her fingers trembled, and her eyes scanned the street, trying to spot the boy who delivered it. But he was already gone, swallowed by the winding alleys of the neighborhood. She unfolded the paper again, praying maybe it had changed in the last 5 seconds. It hadn't. "I know everything." She rushed back inside, her chest tightening. Tunde looked up slowly, his eyes flickering with concern. His body couldn't move, but Nora had learned to read every subtle twitch in his face. She knelt beside him and whispered, her voice shaking. "Tunde, someone knows." He blinked once, long and deliberate, his way of saying go on. She handed him the note. He couldn't read it himself, so she read it aloud. When she finished, he looked away, his eyes fixed on a crack in the ceiling, as if willing himself to become one with the silence. "Tunde, we have to do something," she said, gripping his cold hand. What if this person goes to the police? What if they already have? He blinked twice. No. She stood up, pacing the small room. The clock ticked too loudly, the fan squeaked in the corner, and even the walls seemed to lean in to hear her next words. Nora had replayed that night over and over in her head. Could it have been someone watching from the roadside? A security guard? Maybe a street vendor hiding from the rain? For months, nothing happened. Now, out of nowhere, a note. It couldn't be a prank. No one knew. Not even her sister, not her best friend. Only Tunde. And him taking the blame had buried the secret deep enough until now. She picked up her phone and opened her messages. She didn't know who to call or what to say. She thought of deleting everything. Or running. Maybe they should leave Lagos, go somewhere far, Abuja maybe. But then what? Start over. With what money? And how would Tunde survive on the road? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Message, check your gate. Her blood went cold. She ran to the front door and peered out the window. Taped to the gate was a second paper. Smaller. She tiptoed outside, yanked it down and ran back in. This time it had a photo clip to it. It was a picture of the accident scene. Their car, the broken boy on the ground, Nora standing beside Tunde. Someone had taken a photo that night. She backed away from the table, her hand over her mouth. Tunde's eyes locked on the image, and for the first time since his injury, Nora saw something she hadn't seen in months. Panic. She slid down the wall, tears brimming. They were caught. Whoever this was had waited all this time watching. For what? Blackmail? Revenge? Exposure? Tunde, we're in trouble, she whispered. And for the first time in a year, Tunde let out a sound. Not a word, just a raspy, broken breath that sounded almost like run. That night, Nora couldn't sleep. The rain tapped lightly against the windows like nervous fingers, and every shadow felt like an eye watching her. She lay on the floor beside Tunde's bed, not because there wasn't space on the mattress, but because she needed to feel the cold ground beneath her. It reminded her that this was real. That someone somewhere had proof of their biggest sin. She kept replaying the image. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. Her floral blouse. Tunde's white shirt soaked in rain. The boy's twisted legs. It wasn't just a random picture, it was a threat. And it meant they'd been watched. Back then. And now. At 3:12 a.m., her phone buzzed again. A single message. Nice blouse. You wore it that night too. Her throat tightened. She ran to her wardrobe. The blouse, white with pink flowers, was still hanging, ironed and folded as if it were innocent. She snatched it down and shoved it into a plastic bag, tying it up tight like she was locking away guilt itself. She needed help, but who could she trust? Her mother had stopped speaking to her after she refused to leave Tunde. Her best friend if I thought Nora was mentally unwell. And the police. The last place she'd ever go. As dawn broke, she decided to go outside and clear her head. She pushed Tunde's wheelchair to the veranda, wrapped him in a sweater, and sat beside him with a flask of tea between them. Then she saw him. Across the road, leaning against a streetlight. A man in a long black coat, face partially hidden by a baseball cap, staring right at them. He didn't move. Didn't wave. Just stood. Tunde? Nora whispered, nudging him. Can you see him? Tunde blinked once. Yes. She stood, her knees shaking. The man stepped back into the alley and vanished. Nora ran across the road shouting, Hey, who are you? But by the time she reached the alley, it was empty. No footsteps, no scent, just silence. Back home, she found another note waiting on the veranda chair. You can't outrun what's already behind you. This wasn't just blackmail. This was psychological warfare. Someone was enjoying this. And Nora realized something terrifying. This person didn't want money. They wanted control. And maybe they wanted her. By the time the sun rose fully, Nora's mind felt like a spinning wheel on fire. Every corner of the house now felt unsafe. The creaking doors, the hum of the fridge, the occasional bark from the neighbour's dog, all of it sounded like warnings. She hadn't told Tunde about the man by the streetlight, but she could tell he sensed something. His eyes didn't blink as often, and his breathing had become shallow, like he was listening too. She stared at the newest note again. You can't outrun what's already behind you. It wasn't just the wording that disturbed her, it was how personal it felt. Like whoever this was knew her, knew how her mind worked, knew that guilt was her deepest wound, and that fear was the chain she wrapped around herself every morning before facing the world. The gate creaked. Nora jumped. She rushed to the window and peered through the curtain. It was just Mama Nkechi, the woman who sold vegetables down the street. But even her presence made Nora tense. Could it be her? No, she barely knew how to use a phone, let alone send threatening messages. Still, the paranoia had begun to dig into her skin. She locked the doors, drew the curtains, and checked every room, even the kitchen cupboards. Then she turned to Tunde and whispered, "Who could it be?" He stared back at her. Silent, but there was something in his expression, guilt maybe, or fear. "You remember that day more than you let on, don't you?" she said. He blinked once, slowly. "Did someone see us that night? Did you know someone was there?" Silence. "Tunde, you promised you told me everything. You said no one else knew." He blinked twice. No. But she wasn't convinced anymore. Later that afternoon, she made up her mind she was going to trace the boy who delivered the first note. She remembered his face, a bit too clean to be a street boy, and his eyes had an odd seriousness for someone so young. He had to be a messenger used by whoever was pulling the strings. She waited until Tunde dozed off, then grabbed her bag and headed for the junction. Her heart raced as she approached the nearby game centre where most boys loitered after school hours. She asked the attendant if he had seen a boy with a blue hoodie delivering papers the previous morning. The man squinted. "Ah, you mean that quiet one? He came here once, doesn't play games, just sits and watches." "Do you know his name?" she asked. He shrugged. "No name, but he left something last time." The man rummaged behind the desk and pulled out a brown envelope. "He asked us to give it to a lady in pink scarf if she came looking." Nora's throat dried. She took the envelope and stepped outside before opening it. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "Plug it in. He lied to you." Her hands trembled as she clutched the drive. "He lied? Tunde? About what?" The cracks were deepening, and whatever was buried beneath them was starting to crawl to the surface. Nora didn't go home right away. She needed a quiet place, somewhere far from the weight of Tunde's silence and the haunted memories inside their rented home. Her feet led her to the community library, a place no one her age visited, unless it was WEC season. She walked past dusty shelves and found a dim corner with an old public computer that still hummed like it was breathing. She plugged in the USB drive. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single video file popped up, the realstory.memp4. Her heart pounded. She glanced around the library empty. Only the security guard at the gate, half asleep. She clicked. The video began in silence, shaky and low quality. It was footage from that night, but not from the accident scene. No, this was before. The camera was hidden, probably from a building across the road. It showed Tunde and Nora inside the car, parked by a street junction. She recognized the conversation. They had just eaten suya and were talking about his job interview. They laughed. Tunde sipped from a drink. Then something changed. A second man appeared walking toward their car from the sidewalk. He leaned in through the window, said something to Tunde, and handed him a brown envelope. Nora didn't remember this happening. The video zoomed in slightly. Tunde checked the contents of the envelope and nodded. The other man walked away. The video cut. The next clip was from the accident scene. The camera panned to Tunde, standing beside the body, but not helping. He was searching for something on the ground, digging near the bushes. Then he stood, walked toward the boot of the car, and pulled something out. He looked around carefully, wiped the front bumper, then gestured to Nora to get back into the car. Nora's hands flew to her mouth. She hadn't noticed it that night. She was crying, panicking, shaking. But Tunde wasn't. He was calm, calculated, cleaning. The final clip froze on Tunde's face. Cold, focused, no trace of fear. Then the screen went black. Underneath the video file, there was a single text document titled, "Ichi knew him." Nora clicked. It was a typed note. "The boy that died wasn't random. He was my younger brother. He left the house that night after Tunde promised to give him money to join an apprenticeship. Tunde used him to collect something, then discarded him like trash. You think Tunde's paralyzed by accident? You've been sleeping next to a murderer." Nora's hands were shaking violently now. The library air felt too thick to breathe. She ran outside, gripping the USB like it was poison. Tunde lied. The boy wasn't just a stranger. Tunde knew him. He had set him up. Nora had believed all along that it was a tragic accident, a moment of panic. But now she wasn't sure what she believed anymore. She stumbled down the road, tears blurring her vision. Everything felt unreal. When she got back to the house, the door was slightly open. Her heartbeat spiked. She had locked it before leaving. She stepped inside slowly, eyes scanning the room. And then she froze. Tunde was no longer in his wheelchair. It was empty. The room spun. Nora gripped the doorframe, unable to breathe. The wheelchair sat motionless in the center of the room, its cushions still warm. The blanket she had wrapped around Tunde earlier now draped carelessly over one armrest. But Tunde paralyzed, fragile Tunde was gone. Gone. Her brain raced to find a logical explanation. Had someone taken him? Had the blackmailer broken in? Was this some twisted punishment, a final act of vengeance? She called out, voice trembling. "Tunde?" No answer. She checked the kitchen, nothing. The bathroom empty. She flung open the bedroom wardrobe, praying for a miracle. But he wasn't there. Panic gripped her chest like a vise. Then she noticed something strange. The front door hadn't been forced open. There were no signs of a struggle. And the floor near the wheelchair, it had faint drag marks. Not like someone being pulled, but like someone trying to crawl. A sound from the hallway. Nora spun around. Soft, almost imperceptible. Like movement on tile, she followed the noise with caution, her heart drumming in her ears. She reached the back room they barely used, a dusty space filled with old chairs and boxes. There, in the dim light, was Tunde, on the floor. His body was trembling, his hands barely propping him up, but he had moved. He had crawled across the house. She dropped to her knees beside him. "Tunde, what are you doing? You're not supposed to, you can't." His mouth moved slowly. No sound came out. He pointed weakly toward the corner of the room. Nora followed his gaze. Tucked behind a plastic basin was a crumpled piece of paper. She grabbed it and unfolded it, her hands shaking again. It was written in the same uneven handwriting as before. "Now you know. So does he." Her breath caught. Tunde had seen the video. Or worse, he had known what was on it all along. And now, somehow he had tried to reach this paper. To what? Hide it? Destroy it? Confirm it? Nora turned back to him. "Tunde, did you know the boy?" she asked quietly. His eyes welled up. A single tear rolled down his cheek. And then he blinked once. "Yes!" Nora felt her body go numb. The man she had been protecting, defending, sacrificing for, had let her believe they'd both made a tragic mistake. But he had known that boy, had lured him out, had planned something. She sat back, her head spinning. "You used me," she whispered. But before she could process more, her phone buzzed again. A new number, a new message. Now that you know the truth, Nora, what are you willing to do to keep it buried? She looked down at Tunde half broken on the floor. She didn't know whether to save him or finish what fate had started. Nora stood frozen in the doorway of that dusty back room, her chest rising and falling with shallow, panicked breaths. The man on the floor, Tunde, was no longer just the broken lover she had protected for a year. He was something else now. Something darker. And she couldn't tell if she felt more betrayed or more ashamed that she hadn't seen it sooner. She knelt beside him slowly, still clutching the note in her fist. "You lied to me," she said softly, barely able to form the words. "All this time I thought we were in it together. But you let me carry this with you, thinking it was an accident. A mistake." Tunde's eyes brimmed with more tears. He moved his hand slightly, as if reaching for her, but Nora stepped back. "Don't," she said. Her mind reeled. The blackmailer, whoever he was playing a dangerous game, revealing truths, controlling her every move. Now that she knew the truth, the game had shifted. She pulled out her phone and opened the latest message again. "Now that you know the truth, Nora, what are you willing to do to keep it buried?" It wasn't just a taunt anymore. It was a test. She had a choice: expose Tunde and face the chaos, or protect him again, even knowing the truth. She wanted to scream, cry, run, but instead she picked him up. It took everything she had, but she dragged his limp frame back to the wheelchair, struggling and sweating until he was seated. She wiped her forehead and stared him in the face. "You owe me the full truth now," she whispered. "No more blinking. No more silence. Just nod or shake your head. Clear, honest. Deal?" He blinked once. "Yes." She crouched to his level. "Did you lure that boy out on purpose?" A pause. Then a slow, trembling nod. "Was it for money?" Another nod. She felt her heart break again. The Tunde she had loved had been capable of something cruel, calculated. "Did you mean for him to die?" Tunde's face twisted, his eyes closed, and then he shook his head. No. So the death wasn't planned, but the setup was. She backed away, every emotion warring inside her: rage, heartbreak, confusion, and something far worse: pity. Her phone buzzed again. "He made his choices. Now you make yours. Meet me at the blue kiosk by 7 p.m. Come alone. Don't bring him." She looked up at the clock. 5:34 p.m. Nora's chest tightened. Whoever this was, they wanted to meet, face to face. And they didn't want Tunde there, which meant this wasn't over. Not even close. She stood up, trembling. For over a year, she had been mocked, pitied, and misunderstood for staying with a paralyzed man. But tonight, for the first time, she wasn't staying. She was leaving. And depending on what she found at the blue kiosk, she might never come back. The evening sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and fading gold. But for Nora, the world was colourless. Every step she took toward the blue kiosk at the edge of Ojolegba felt like walking into a storm she couldn't see but knew would drown her. She wore a black hoodie, the strings pulled tight around her face, and kept her head low. Her palms were sweaty, her phone gripped tightly. She hadn't told Tunde where she was going, only whispered that she needed air, and locked the door behind her. Part of her hoped he wouldn't still be there when she got back. The blue kiosk was run down. It used to be a sugarcane stand before the owner died last year. Now it sat abandoned near the pedestrian bridge, half covered in torn posters and dried leaves. There were no streetlights nearby, just passing cars and tired faces on the move. Nora arrived 5 minutes early. She stood beside the kiosk, her back pressed to its side, scanning every shadow. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. From the alley beside the kiosk, a young man stepped out, barely 20, slim build, and sharp eyes that gleamed with something deeper than anger. He wore a black shirt and jeans, and in his right hand he carried a small phone. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at her. looked through her. "You're early," he said finally, his voice low. "Who are you?" Nora asked, trying to steady her voice. "I'm not important, but you remember the boy, don't you?" he asked. "The one you both left on the road like he was nothing." Nora's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't meant to happen like that." He laughed bitterly. "It never is, but it did. And you left him to die. You both did." Nora shook her head. "You don't understand. I wanted to help. I begged him to stop. I didn't know." "But you didn't stop him," the boy snapped. "You sat in the car and watched my brother die. You thought because you were in love, it would all go away." His hands trembled now. Nora took a step forward, voice cracking. "What do you want from me?" He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. A familiar video began to play the same footage from the USB drive. "I want you to feel what we felt. I want the world to know what you both did," he said. "Unless..." She swallowed hard. "Unless what?" He stepped closer, eyes burning into hers. "Unless you help me finish what was started. You want forgiveness. Earn it. You want to keep the secret? Then help me expose the rest of the rot he's hiding. Because trust me, Nora, that accident wasn't the first thing Tunde did. And it wasn't the worst." Nora's head reeled. "What do you mean, the worst?" she whispered. The boy looked down the street, then back at her. "Your paralyzed boyfriend. He used to be part of a ring, a criminal group that exploited teenagers, stole from them, pushed them into dangerous errands for money. My brother was one of them. And Tunde, he made sure he didn't come back." Nora stumbled back a step. "You're lying." "Am I?" he said, and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a flash drive. "Plug this in tonight. Decide by morning. Expose him or I do." He dropped it in her hand and walked away. Nora stood there, shaking. She thought the worst was over. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Nora's hand shook the entire ride back. She boarded a keek to avoid being noticed, clutching the flash drive like it contained a live bomb. She kept replaying the boy's words in her head. "He used to be part of a ring, and Tunde made sure my brother didn't come back." It felt unreal, like stepping into someone else's nightmare. By the time she reached their gate, the street was quiet. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked the door, stepped in, and shut it quietly behind her. Tunde's wheelchair was still near the window where she left it, but he wasn't in it. Again. Her chest tightened. "Nora," came a weak voice. She turned. He was on the couch, half sitting, his legs awkwardly positioned as if he'd tried again to stand and failed. She rushed to him. "What are you doing? You're hurting yourself." But his hand reached out and held her wrist tightly, tighter than she expected. His grip, though weak, carried desperation. "You left," he croaked. "I had to," she said, trying to pull away. "Where did you go?" he asked. Nora didn't answer. She gently pried his hand off and walked to the corner table where an old laptop sat. The moment she plugged in the flash drive, her hands went cold. It opened into a folder labeled Confessions. Inside were voice recordings, screenshots, and a long text file. The first recording began to play automatically. Tunde's voice. But it was different, sharper, faster. A version of him from before the accident. "These boys, they'll do anything for small money. Just promise them phone credit, and they'll cross the highway with drugs. Who cares? Their parents already gave up on them." Nora covered her mouth. Another clip began. "Tell the kid to wait by the footbridge. Don't let him see the full load. He's too young to understand the risk." Then another. "Forget the boy. If anything happens to him, we'll deal with it. He signed up. Nobody forced him." She couldn't breathe. The boy had been right. Tunde had used teenagers as mules. And her worst fear was now real. The hit and run wasn't the start of it. It was just the part she witnessed. She looked over at Tunde, who was watching her silently from the couch. His eyes begged her not to ask, not to confirm. But she did anyway. "You knew they could get hurt," she said, voice hollow. Tunde's lips trembled. "I left that life." "You didn't leave," she snapped. "You got caught in it. And now you're here lying my house, making me carry your guilt while you sit there like a victim." "I didn't kill him," he whispered. "But you didn't save him either," she fired back. "And now I have proof, real proof, that you're not who you pretend to be." He went silent again. And in that moment, Nora realized the weight she was truly carrying. It wasn't just the secret. It was the fact that she'd become part of his cover-up. Her phone buzzed. A new message. "You've seen enough. It's time to choose a side. His or mine." Nora stared at the screen. The clock read 11:17 p.m. By morning, her choice would become someone else's truth. Nora barely slept that night. She sat in the kitchen, staring at the flash drive still plugged into the laptop, the final audio clip playing on loop, like a cruel lullaby. Tunde's voice arrogant, emotionless, in control, not the broken man in a wheelchair now pretending to be helpless. No, the real Tunde, the one who had used vulnerable boys as pawns, the one who let a child die and called it just another risk. How many lies had she lived through, mistaking them for love? She thought about the world outside, the same world that mocked her, laughed at her loyalty, and labelled her as the foolish girl who stayed with a man that couldn't walk. She had endured shame, disrespect, isolation, all for what she thought was love, or at least duty. But now she wasn't sure what she felt anymore. It wasn't pity. It wasn't love. It was rage. At dawn, she stood quietly in the living room, her hoodie pulled over her head, the flash drive in one pocket and her phone in the other. Tunde was asleep or pretending to be. His chest rose and fell with a slow rhythm, but his hand twitched slightly as she walked past him. Still awake, still listening. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't need to. She walked out, the door clicking softly behind her, and stepped into the early morning air. Lagos was already stirring. Horns, vendors, bus conductors shouting destinations. Life moved on, unaware that Nora's life was hanging by a thread of choice. She didn't go to the police. Not yet. Instead, she headed back toward the boy, the one behind the flash drive, the messages, the notes. She didn't even know his name, but she knew exactly where to find him. At the abandoned train station behind the blue kiosk. He was already there, seated on a broken bench, sipping a bottle of water, like he hadn't just changed someone's life overnight. "You came," he said, not looking at her. "I did," Nora replied, "and I know the truth now." He turned to face her. His eyes looked older than his face. "Then you know what you have to do." She nodded. "But I'm not doing it for you." He raised an eyebrow. "Then who?" She stared into the distance. "For the boy you lost. For the others like him. And for me." She pulled out the flash drive and handed it over. He took it slowly, carefully, like it was sacred. "I want you to wait," she said. "Give me 24 hours. After that, do what you need to do." He stared at her for a moment, then gave a single nod. "You have until tomorrow morning." As she walked away, a plan was already forming in her head, one that didn't involve crying or hiding. If Tunde had used her to hide his sins, then maybe it was time she used his weakness to finally break free. Because there was one thing she now understood: staying quiet made her part of the crime. And Nora? She was done being an accomplice. The walk home felt different, not because the streets had changed, but because she had. Nora had always been the girl who waited for love to heal, for people to understand, for things to somehow fix themselves. But this time she wasn't waiting. She was preparing. She walked through the gate with a calm that even surprised her, Inside, Tunde was back in his wheelchair, staring out the window like he'd known she would return. "You left," he said softly. "I did." He glanced at her pocket. "You gave him the flash drive." She didn't answer. "You know what that means, right?" he added, his voice unusually steady for someone who usually struggled to speak. "It means the truth will finally come out," she replied, walking past him toward the bedroom. "Nora," his voice cracked slightly. "Please, don't do this." She paused, turned. "You did this, Tunde. You started all of this the day you chose to use those the boys like they were nothing. The day you dragged me into your mess, and let me believe we were equals in guilt." "I tried to protect you," he said. "No," she replied sharply. "You protected yourself, and you let me carry the shame." He didn't argue. He couldn't. That afternoon, Nora did something she hadn't done since the accident. She sat in front of the mirror, cleaned her face, and stared into her own eyes for 10 straight minutes. She didn't cry. She didn't look away. Then she opened her notebook, the one she used to write nursing exam prep notes in, and started writing. Not formulas or flashcards this time, but everything. A confession, her version of the truth. Not the sugar-coated one she told herself to survive. Not the edited version she imagined when she needed to sleep. The raw truth. From the moment they hit that boy to the way they left the scene, to how Tunde manipulated the narrative ever since. She wrote until her hands ached. When she was done, she sealed the pages in an envelope and tucked it behind the cupboard, taping it to the back wall with the note. "If anything happens to me, give this to the press." She knew it was risky. But she also knew the boy Tunde's victim's brother wasn't the only one watching anymore. Once secrets start to crack, others see the light too. That night, Tunde called her weakly from the living room. "I want to tell you something," he said. She walked in, arms folded. "I wasn't always like that," he said, his voice barely audible. I lost my way. Got involved with people I couldn't escape from." "You didn't try to escape," Nora replied. "You just tried not to get caught." He looked up, defeated. "Do you still love me?" The question hung in the air like a thread. Nora looked at him, really looked. The same face she had cried for, fought for, protected. But behind it now, she saw what she hadn't wanted to admit. "No," she said calmly. "I loved who I thought you were, but he never existed." And with that, she turned off the light and walked away. Outside, the boy was watching from across the road. The countdown had begun. By morning, the sky was grey. Heavy clouds hung like a warning over the neighbourhood, and even the air felt strange, thicker, quieter. Nora stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the street. It was 6:57 a.m. She had 3 minutes before her time was up. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You had your 24 hours. The world hears it next." She expected to feel scared. But she didn't. Instead, she replied, "Let them. The only person still hiding is him." And just like that, she felt it relief. Not because she was free, but because she had stopped being afraid of what people would think. Let them laugh. Let them mock. At least now, they'd be mocking a woman who chose to face the truth instead of burying it. She turned and walked toward the kitchen. That's when she saw the paper slipped under the door overnight. No name, just another note. "You might be ready to tell the truth, but he isn't." Nora dropped it instantly. Her body stiffened. It wasn't the blackmailer this time. It was someone else, someone who didn't want the truth to come out at all. She ran back into the living room. "Tunde, did someone come last night?" He didn't respond. She rushed over to him, grabbed his arm. "Tunde, answer me." He blinked, slowly. "Once." "Yes." "Who?" "Who?" He didn't blink again. Just turned his eyes to the floor. "Tunde?" she shouted. "You promised you'd tell me everything." He coughed a rough, dry sound, and whispered, "They're watching now. They said if I speak, they'll finish what they started." Nora froze. "They?" she asked slowly. Tunde nodded, then mouthed, "The old ring. They're back." It hit her like a hammer. This wasn't just about the boy's death. It was deeper. The ring the group Tunde once worked with knew the truth was bubbling to the surface, and now they were sending warnings, threats. And maybe they were closer than she realized. She heard a knock at the door. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. Nora turned to Tunde. "Did you tell them I was going to expose you?" His eyes widened in fear. "No," he whispered, "but they already know." She stepped back from the door, unsure what to do. Another knock, louder this time. She tiptoed to the window and peeked out. A man stood there, broad shoulders, black cap, and holding a manila envelope. He wasn't a boy. He wasn't the same one who gave her the flash drive. This was someone new. Someone sent to clean up. She backed away from the window. Whatever she had set in motion, it was too late to stop. The knock came again. This time firmer, not the kind of knock from someone bringing news, but the kind that demanded obedience. Nora stood frozen by the wall, her breath shallow. Tunde sat still in the living room, his body slumped in his chair, eyes fixed on the front door like it held death itself. She looked at him. His fear was real, which meant hers needed to be louder. She stepped forward slowly, heart pounding, and whispered through the door. "Who is it?" "I." No answer. She tightened her grip on the doorknob, then opened it just a crack. The man didn't flinch. He wore a dark grey jacket, his head tilted slightly downward. In his hand was the manila envelope, thick and creased, with Nora's name scrawled across the front in bold black ink. "For you," he said simply. "Who sent it?" she asked. "Does it matter?" he replied. "Read it, before others do." He turned and walked away, no phone, no trace, just vanished into the street like he'd never existed. Nora stood there, holding the envelope like it would burn her fingers. She closed the door, locked it twice, and returned to the living room. Tunde's eyes were still on her. She said nothing, just tore the envelope open and pulled out the pages. It wasn't a threat. It was worse. It was a timeline. A full breakdown of everything Tunde had done over the last 4 years, names, dates, amounts, even photos. There were transactions tied to missing street kids, notes about a man named Kobe, allegedly the leader of the ring, and scribbled in red at the bottom of the last page were 3 words. "You're on record." Her stomach twisted. Someone had compiled all of this, and they didn't just want to expose Tunde, they were building a case, a file, a storm. She handed it to Tunde without a word. His hands shook as he read. "This isn't from the boy," Nora said quietly. "This is bigger." Tunde looked at her, tears filling his eyes again. "I told them I was out. I told them I couldn't help anymore. They said I owed them. That if I stayed quiet, they'd leave me alone." "But you didn't stay quiet," Nora replied. "You let me get involved. You made me lie. You made me cover for you." His head dropped. "I didn't know they'd come for you." She stepped back, her voice rising. "They're already here, Tunde, you understand? Someone just delivered a full report on your crimes to our front door. You think this is still about that night? That boy was just the beginning. Now they're tying you back to everything." He coughed, trying to breathe through his panic. They'll kill me." Nora turned away from him, pacing. "Maybe," she said quietly, "but if I keep covering for you, they might come for me too." The envelope now lay open on the table, its secrets exposed. And for the first time since the story began, Nora no longer saw herself as the victim. She saw herself as a witness. And the only way out might be turning on the man she once protected. Nora didn't eat that day. She couldn't. Her stomach twisted every time she glanced at the open envelope on the table. The contents didn't just prove what Tunde had done, they painted him as part of something massive, something so dark that just touching it could stain anyone forever. She replayed the words over and over in her head. "You're on record." That meant someone was watching both of them, following their every move, and now, the pressure wasn't just coming from the boy who lost his brother, it was coming from the ghosts Tunde had worked with. The old ring. The people who didn't leave loose ends. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number. We don't want to hurt you. We want to make a deal." She stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the screen. "What kind of deal?" she typed back. A reply came almost instantly. "Come alone. Old shipping warehouse by the canal. 8 p.m, one chance." It felt like a trap. Of course it did. But so did staying in the house, sitting beside a man who had ruined lives and now clung to her silence like a safety net. She turned to Tunde, who hadn't moved for nearly an hour. "I got a message," she said. He didn't respond. They want to meet. At the canal. That got his attention. His head turned fast. "No," he whispered, voice dry. "Don't go." She folded her arms. "Why not?" "It's not a meeting. It's a warning. If you go, they'll silence you." She walked closer, her voice hardening. Then why didn't they do that already? Why send notes? Files? Flash drives. You think they're warning me to scare me? No, Tunde. They're warning me because I'm still useful. He looked away. She crouched beside him. "I think they want to use me. I think they're offering me a way out. But here's the thing, I'm not loyal to you anymore. And I don't owe them either. So maybe I'll make my own deal." Tunde reached for her hand, but she stepped back. At exactly 7:52 p.m, Nora left the house. She didn't take her phone, just a recording device tucked inside her bra and a flashlight in her hoodie pocket. If they tried anything, someone would know. She reached the warehouse by 8:06 p.m. It was dark. Empty. The kind of place secrets come to rot. Then she heard a car door shutting. Footsteps. 3 men emerged from the shadows. 1 younger, 2 older. The tallest of them wore a white shirt under a long black coat. He looked at her like he already knew what she was going to say. "You're braver than we thought," he said. "I didn't come to beg," Nora replied. "I came to listen." The man smiled. "Good," he said, "because we don't want your silence anymore. We want your voice." She blinked. "What?" "We want you to testify," he said. "We're taking Tunde down, and we need someone they'll believe." Nora's breath caught. So this wasn't the old ring. This was something else. A task force. Or worse, a rival group. And now, they wanted her to help them destroy the man she once protected. The air inside the warehouse was sharp with oil and rust. Nora's eyes darted between the 3 men. None of them looked like they were bluffing. No masks, no threats, just calm, dangerous certainty. The kind that came from knowing they already had the upper hand. "You want me to testify?" she asked, her voice low. "To what?" The man in the black coat stepped forward and pulled a small envelope from his jacket. "To everything," he said. "The boys. The money. The accident. Your silence." Nora swallowed hard. "I didn't kill anyone." "No," the second man said, stepping beside him. "But you helped a man who did. That makes you a witness. And in this game, witnesses are either protected or erased." She looked down, heart pounding. This wasn't about conscience anymore. It was strategy. A matter of survival. "Who are you?" she asked. "You're not police." "No," the leader replied. "We're not. But we're watching the same people they are. Tunde's not the only target. He's just the start." "And if I say no?" she asked. The man tilted his head. "Then your story ends like his, will quiet, ugly, and forgotten." The third man finally spoke. He hadn't said a word the entire time until now. We've seen women like you before. You start off trying to protect someone. Then one day you realize you've become the thing you were shielding them from. That one stung. They handed her the envelope. Inside, she saw a non-disclosure contract, a fake identity form, and a one-way ticket to Ghana. If you give us your testimony, the leader said, we'll protect you. But you leave everything behind. Tunde, this life, your name. Nora stared at the papers. A second chance. But at what cost? What about him? She asked, thinking of the boy, the one who started all this with the flash drive. He deserves justice too. The man nodded. He'll get it. You're not the only witness we've approached, but you're the only one living with the monster. That word again, monster. She thought of the nights she fed Tunde, wiped his mouth, changed his clothes. All the times she believed she was doing it for love. But was she actually just buying time for a criminal? She looked up. I'll think about it. You don't have long, the man said. They're watching you. And they know your silence is slipping. They walked out without another word. Nora stood alone in the warehouse, clutching the papers. It wasn't a matter of whether she would betray Tunde. It was a matter of how. Nora walked home under the dark sky like a ghost, unseen, unheard, but carrying the weight of a choice that could rewrite her entire life. The envelope tucked beneath her jacket felt heavier with each step. A new name, a new life, a clean slate, and a lie too big to ever come back from. She paused at the gate. The house looked smaller than she remembered, more fragile, as if even the walls knew a storm was coming. She stepped inside and found Tunde asleep in the living room, his chest rising and falling peacefully. She hated how innocent he looked, as if he hadn't once orchestrated pain, used boys like currency, destroyed families including her own. She didn't wake him. She simply watched him sleep for a long time, as memories played in her mind like an old film reel. His laughter. The way he once pulled her into his arms after getting the job interview. The fake tears he cried after the accident. The silence he weaponized to keep her loyal. She walked quietly to the bedroom and pulled out the notebook where she had written her confession. She added one final line. And if he wakes up and finds me gone, let it remind him, loyalty is not the same as blindness. She placed the notebook on the kitchen table. Then she opened her phone. There was a new message from the boy, the one whose brother had died. I know you met them. I'm watching too. I hope you make the right choice, not for me, for yourself. For the first time, Nora replied. I'm sorry. I didn't know who he really was, but I know now. I'm going to fix it. She packed only one small bag. Just essentials. The fake ID was already activated. The flight was for 10 a.m. She turned off the lights, then paused at the doorway of the living room. Tunde stirred. Nora? He whispered. She froze. He was awake. Hey. Nora, are you still here? He asked. She stepped closer. I am, but not for long. He tried to sit up more. Where are you going? She leaned forward, close enough for him to hear her whisper. I'm going where your sins can't follow me. His face paled. You're turning me in. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Instead, she kissed his forehead gently, then walked out the door without looking back. The airport buzzed with the kind of energy only Lagos could provide, hectic, sweaty, and impatient. Nora kept her hoodie on, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. Her one small bag rested by her feet as she sat at the edge of the departure lounge, her heart beating like a war drum. She clutched the boarding pass with her new name, Amakaduru. It didn't feel real. Everything had moved so fast. Less than 48 hours ago, she was just another woman stuck in a sad story. Now she was preparing to vanish into a new one, a woman with no history, no family, and no guilt, if the plan worked. Her flight to Accra was scheduled to board in 15 minutes. She checked her phone one last time. There was only one new message, from a private number. "You left the lion alive, Nora. Don't be surprised if it still bites." Her hands trembled. She looked around the airport. No strange faces, no eyes following her. But the message meant someone had already noticed she was gone. Tunde, or worse, someone behind him. She almost stood to walk away to abandon the flight and disappear into the crowd, but then a voice rang through the speakers. "This is the final boarding call for Flight 7N12 to Accra." Nora moved quickly, getting in line behind two older women arguing about missing passports. She clutched her fake ID tighter. Every step forward felt like a step into freedom and betrayal. She made it past the first checkpoint, then the second. She was 5 people away from boarding when it happened. A tap on her shoulder. She turned. 2 men stood behind her, dark suits, plain expressions. One held a badge. Nora Obi. Her stomach dropped. She tried to respond, but her mouth went dry. "You need to come with us." She blinked. "I'm sorry, you must have the wrong person. My name is..." The second man held up a photo. Her photo. From her real ID. "We're not here to arrest you," he said calmly, "but we need you to see something before you leave the country." She looked toward the gate, the final barrier to her escape. But she didn't move. "Please," the first man said. "It's about Tunde and the boy's family. You need to see it for yourself." She didn't know why she said yes. Maybe curiosity, maybe fear, maybe something inside her still wanted closure. They led her out of the boarding area and into a private lounge. A screen was waiting. The man played the video. It was Tunde, sitting in his wheelchair, alone, speaking directly to the camera. "If this is being watched, it means she's gone. And I'm done." He sighed. "I never told her the truth. Not all of it. I made her believe the worst thing I ever did was that accident. But there was more. There were others. And I lied to protect myself, not her." He looked straight into the camera. "Her name is Nora Obi. She is the only person who ever tried to save me, and I used her." The screen went black. The agent turned to her. "He recorded that this morning. Then he disappeared. We haven't found him." Nora felt like the air had been sucked from the room. Disappeared? He had no working legs. No one came to help him. Unless... She looked down at her hands. This wasn't over. Not yet. Rain had started to fall by the time Nora returned to the house. She walked in slowly, unsure of what she would find. A note. A body? A trap? She was prepared for anything. But the house was quiet. Not the usual heavy silence of secrets, but the kind that follows after someone leaves for good. Tunde's wheelchair sat empty by the window. His slippers remained by the door. The tea flask she had left in the kitchen the day before was still half full, but he was gone. No forced entry, no sign of a struggle, no spilled medication, nothing. He had vanished on his own terms or with help. Nora couldn't tell. What she knew was this: she wasn't being chased anymore. She was being watched. She checked her notebook. The one with her confession. It was still taped to the wall, untouched. So whoever had come, they hadn't come to destroy her. Not yet. She sat on the edge of the bed, water dripping from her hoodie, her phone clenched tightly in her hand. She replayed Tunde's recorded video again. "Her name is Nora Obi. She is the only person who ever tried to save me, and I used her." It wasn't a confession. It was a goodbye. Maybe even a trap disguised as a farewell. The agents who pulled her from the airport had said one thing before she left. "Be careful, Nora. The moment you chose to walk away, you became valuable, but to the wrong people, that makes you dangerous." She didn't know where Tunde was. She didn't know if the ring had taken him, or if he had returned them willingly. She didn't know if the boy, the one who lost his brother, still trusted her. But she knew this. The truth wasn't buried. It was loose, and someone, somewhere, was still watching to see what she would do next. She looked out the window as the rain poured harder, her reflection barely visible in the glass. And in that moment, she whispered to herself, "I'm not running anymore.